Hello, Avilash and Rajni. Let us start the lesson. Okay, today I'm going to start the new topic promises. Okay, so what is the meaning of this process and how it works? Why it is required in real time applications? This type of things we are going to learn here. Okay, generally, what is the meaning of process means promise means I will do. That is what promise. For example, I have given you some task, some programming task I have given you. What will you say immediately to me? Yes, I will do. Next, after some time, after a few minutes or something, just you will say that my work is completed, my task is completed. That is what promise fulfilled. We can also call it as resolve. And sometimes what happens if it is particularly longer period of time, in the middle you can just inform me the progress. That means you can just message me like, okay, this much work is completed, this much pending. These are called notifications. Work is totally completed is resolved, and partially completed means notification. So, to pass these notifications, to pass these resolvements, to handle all this process better in programming, we require some promise mechanism. So, the promise mechanism is called as $Q. With the help of $Q is a service which is used to create promises in AngularJS. To create the promises in AngularJS, we have a predefined service called $Q. And how does it work? To understand how the promise work, you have to first understand how the normal program works. That means generally the program is divided into multiple functions. One function may call another function. When we call the function, that function definition will execute and come back to the actual place where we call it. For example, from the function 1, we are calling the function 2. So the execution flow will jump from function 1 to function 2. It will execute all the code of the function 2 and comes back to the function 1 and continue remaining code. So it is look like this. We have function 1. Here we have some implementation of the code, and after completion of this one, we also have function 2. Okay, suppose in the middle we are calling the function 2 from function 1. What happens normally without a promise how it will execute generally. First, a function 1 execution starts, and first statement completed, second statement completed. Then it will come to this statement. As a part of this statement, it will go to the function 2 definition. It will execute all this code, whatever present. After completion of this one, then it will come back here. After completion of that function 2, it will come back here and go ahead with the remaining part. This is the normal program execution flow in every programming language. Here the main features are, while the function 2 is in execution process, the function 1 just waiting. Function 2 presently executing means, meanwhile, function 1 just keep waiting. But think of, while the function 2 is executing, function 1 also executing parallelly. That means function 1 and function 2 both executes parallelly. See, from here we are calling the function 2. So one process, it will go to the function 2 and it will keep executing function 2. and meanwhile it will continue next statement. It will continue the remaining part of the function 1. So that is called asynchronous execution. So I will picturize it. So previous one is a synchronous execution, and now we are going to create the asynchronous execution. Asynchronous execution. Asynchronous means in background, invisibly. So asynchronous execution means we will call the function 2, it will go to function 2. So function 2 is being executed. Meanwhile, function 2, function 1 also will continue executing. Function 1 will not wait for the completion of the function 2. Function 1 just continue execution. Okay, so this one is the process number 1, process number 2. So as a first process, function to executing, function to all the statements are being executed one by one. Meanwhile, parallelly, function 1 also continue executing. Okay, to avoid the confusion, here I'm giving 2, here I'm giving 1. Okay. So process number 1 and process number 2 both will execute parallelly. What I'm saying, these statements and these statements will execute parallelly. And which will be finished first, nobody can say. It depends on actual situation, how the processor works and how many other tasks and other process the processor has, depending on the operating system, depending on its processor speed, depending on the real performance and real situation. Plus, sometimes some statements may take longer period of time to execute. Some statements may be finished faster. So we cannot say based on number of statements also. So that is all, just leave it. Which will be finished, we cannot predict, leave it. The main part is the function 2 and the function 1. These statements, you can see together, these statements execute exact parallelly. Okay, assume that after some time, after just 2 seconds, suppose this part completed, which one, function 1 remaining part completed, and after few more seconds, function 2 also completed. After completion of the function 2, some result value generated. Suppose we have done some addition of numbers or any other calculation. That addition of numbers result I want to receive, I want to print it in the output. To receive the result value, there should be another set of statements. For example, we have done calculation of area of circle. To receive that area of circle and to display it properly to the user, there should be some set of statements, and I'm writing that code in another function. Function 3 comes into picture now. And after completion of function 2, it will go to function 3, and function 3 will execute. What this function 3 will do, it will receive the response or result value, whatever completion, whatever generated in the function 2. That's it. So how to perform this? In the function 2, first we have to say the statement differ. What this statement will do, the statement will say that this function 2 is a differently executing. It's differently executing. It's not a regular function. It's not a regular function. It's a differently executing function. How do you say that it's a differently executing? By using the function differ. So once you set differ, what happens? It will go to the last statement. What's the last statement? Return promise. What this promise will do? Promise means I told one example of giving a task for you. Listen, I have given you some task. Okay, you have to do this. Then what will you say immediately to me? Yes, I will do. You will say that yes, I will do. That is what promise. So that promise is represented as an object here. That promise object is written here. That written object will go to a variable called promise here. There should be a variable here that is called promise. Based on that promise only, we are able to register the callback function, that is function 3. With the help of this promise variable, we are able to register the function 3. Then, when the function 3 will be called really, suppose in the middle, okay, here at this statement exactly, the process completed, process over, I mean calculation something over. Then we have to say resolve. Whenever we said resolve, whenever we said resolve, then that means the process completed and it will go to the function 3. So the difference between this line and this line is that this line says that just we register the callback function. What is the meaning of callback? Suppose I have given you some task, right? After giving the task, you said that my promise, I will do this. Then after completion of 1.5 hour or 2 hours, you completed the task and you have submitted it to me. After submission, I need to receive the submission. I need to receive your document, whatever you have given to me, and I need to check it. Then I need to make necessary action, further action. So to receive your submission, to process it, we require a separate function. A separate function is required to receive your submission and to do necessary further action. So that is called callback function. Function 3 is a callback function here. First we have to register the callback function. First we have to say that, okay, this function has to be called after completion of the task. First we have to register, first we have to fix it. We are not executing that. First we have to fix that function. That fixing is nothing but registration. When we have to register at the beginning of the task itself. Once in the beginning I have given you some task and you said that I will do, right. At that moment itself, I need to create a function. Okay, this function is dedicated to receive that submission and to do necessary process. I need to fix a, and that means I need to register a callback function there itself. Whenever work is really submitted to me, then that callback function will automatically execute. So this second line is indicating actual call the callback function. When the callback function will be called, when we say resolve, and the function 3 is a callback function here, is a callback function. Function 3 itself is a callback function. What I'm saying, at the beginning we say resolve, sorry, at the beginning we register the callback function. At the end of the process, then we say call the callback function. So, and the execution flow, okay, the execution flow will be like, once we say defer, once we say defer, directly it will go to return statement, but parallelly the remaining statements also will execute it. So I will start from the beginning. So just here the starting point of the process. Okay, function 2 we are calling. Asynchronously or synchronously, asynchronously we are calling. Once you call asynchronously, it will go to function 2 and to say that function is asynchronous function, we have to say differ. If you don't place differ, what happens? This function 2 is treated as a normal, regular function. So after completion of the function to all the statements, then only it will continue remaining part of the function 1. Suppose in the function 2 we have written large amount of code, long loops I have written, lakhs of times it has to be iterated. Otherwise, some database connections are there, file processing is there. Lot of records have to be retrieved from one source to other source. We have to copy the data, we have to fetch the data, we have to make the conditions, we have to attach the files, read the files, copy all the contacts from one location to other location, hundreds of thousands of contacts available. So like this, lot of work is there. It may take some time. It's not finished in half second or 1 second. It may take more than 1 second. In real-time applications also, you will have a lot of things, right? Suppose you have a Google Drive or OneDrive something. You want to empty your recycle bin. You want to empty your recycle bin. I'm talking about the cloud storage websites like Google Drive. You want to empty the recycle bin. So empty the recycle bin means it will take some time. Okay, leave it. You want to export your Gmail contacts into a file. That exporting may take some time. It's not as simple like sending a mail, right? Exporting the contacts, it has to read the contacts, it has to identify the mail IDs, phone numbers, also all those things. It has to create a file, it has to write the data to that file. It will take some time. And attachment of files and other other one. You are uploading your own video in YouTube, in your YouTube channel. You are uploading your own video. This is not what taking some time, more than 1 second, maybe 10 seconds to 1 minute or 10 minutes, countless. Then we have to keep all that code in a separate function and we have to execute that function through callback through this asynchronous approach. If it is a short task, no need of doing all these things. If it is a long task, large task, we have to follow this asynchronous and promise. So once you say differ, directly it will go to return statement, and based on this return, we return the promise, right? That promise will come to here. Based on that promise, immediately register the callback function. That means we fix this function 3. This has to be called where after the completion of the function to task. Just we fix it. This is what exactly happens in the beginning of the task. And after completion, immediately after differ, another process is going on. These statements also continue executing statement by statement. This may take some time. This can be heavy work. So after completion of all these, some result value will find. That is like a return value in the general function. You will return the value, right? Generally, what happens in anywhere, you return a function or method. You found some result value. That result value will say return. So just like that, that return kind of thing is replaced by resolve here. This return is different. This return is about a promise return in the beginning. This result says that work is completed. This return promise saying that at the beginning of the task is not started even. Result means the task is finished, work is over. Then automatically already we have registered the callback function, right? So it will go to the function 3 directly. This function 3 will receive the result value whatever you return, whatever the result is, that value will be given by received by the function 3 and it will print the value, it will do some necessary action, whatever required. Okay, in order to do all these things, we require $Q service in AngularJS. Actually, we will perform this particular task in different programming languages in different ways. AngularJS style of development is $Q. In Java also you can implement this type of execution. In .NET also we can do. In many other languages also we can do. In AngularJS, how to handle this $q. So okay, $q.html plus copy paste the angular.js file into current working folder. Okay, so copy this angular.js file, paste into this folder. Creating a module, creating a controller is common. And instead of giving function name separately and so instead of creating the function separately and function name here, we can cut this one and paste here itself. Directly we can mention the function here itself. At the time function name not required. Directly this function itself is identified as a controller. Now this function is identified as a my controller. So then directly here we can receive the argument $scope. Let's take an example of adding the two numbers. A equal to empty, B equal to empty, C equal to empty. Now add button is clicked. Now $scope.c is equal to parts int. Parts int means converting into integer. So this controller finished. Now just this first text box is binded to A. Second one then button, on button clicking we are calling add function. Then we are displaying the result value in the third text box. Okay, now just we enter the value. Okay, we have added and displayed. Assume that this addition process is a very long process. It is taking around 5 seconds to perform this particular task. At the time, how to handle that? If you keep all that large amount of code in this place, what is the problem? Every time we click on add button, the complete process will be occur, and it may take some time. Suppose 5 to 10 seconds of time it is taking because it's a large amount of code, or reading the data from any database or any data source, and doing the operations on many records, many database records. So any large operations are there. So if you keep all that code here, it will take some time. And if it is taking some time, the browser will be crash. To avoid all these indirect problems, we have to execute this code in asynchronous mode. Then what to do? We have to use $q. First, we have to keep this code in a separate function. So function, my function, we have created a function. It is receiving x, y, two arguments, and z equal to x plus y. Return the z value. We wrote a simple function, and we have to call that function from here. We have to call the my function, and we have to pass the $scope.a and $scope.b values as arguments. And whatever my function returns, that value will be received by C. Actually, here also same thing. Same output is coming, but we have to keep all that logic. What are the code for addition of numbers? I mean, what are the code that you want to execute really? Which task you want to perform? That actual task related code should be present in this function, and we have to call this function through asynchronous mode. How to call this function through asynchronous mode? Just by using $q. Okay, so here we have to say $q. We have to receive the $q from the library. Just like how we are receiving $scope, same way we have to receive the $q. And that $q we have to pass as argument for this my function. And that $q is being received here. Based on the $q, we have to say that this function, this current working function, is a differently executing function. It's not a regular function. And this differ function returns an object of the deferred. This differ function returns an object. That object reference we are going to receive into the variable deferred. And at that time, we have to execute this particular code after some time, not immediately, right? So we have to keep this in a set a timeout function. So after 5000 milliseconds only, it will call this function. This function will execute after 5000 milliseconds only, not immediately. So indirectly, what happens whenever you set a differ after completion of this statement differ, this part will not execute immediately, right? After 5000 milliseconds only, this function will execute. So this part will be skipped. Directly from here, it will jump to return statement. So once you said differ, that means this function executes in a different approach, means asynchronously. Immediately after that, it will go to return defer.promise. Why? Because this function is which one set timeout. So it will not execute this part of the code. After 5 seconds only, it will execute that. And now, so defer.promise says that defer.promise representing the promise object. What is the meaning of promise object here? After completion of that particular task, execute the function. Execute which function? Callback function. That is a promise says. So the type of promise object is written here. That promise object should be received here. Based on that promise, what you can do, you can say then of function. So this function will execute after completion of the resolvement. I mean here you have to say resolve instead of return. We have to say resolve. Default dot resolve of, what is the resolve value? Z. Whatever the value you pass here, this value you can receive it here. Something like sum. That sum value is received here. And this sum we can display in the $scope.c. So finally check the output working or not. I have given 45 and 35. Immediately no response notice, but the function is still executing in background. After a few seconds, we got the result 80. So how the flow of execution happens, just check it. First, process starts from here. My function, we're calling the my function, and also we're passing the a value and b value. That means first text box and second text box values. And also we are passing the $q as argument. This a value, b value, $q will be respectively received by x, y, and $q. So $q.differ means that this function is asynchronous function and it will execute differently. From there, directly go to promise. This part will be skipped because of set timeout. And once you say promise, the promise will be received by this variable, and based on that, we are registering the callback function. Means that this function has to be executed after completion of the resolvement of the function. Okay, now just still that function is not executed. It is just registered and keep it. Next, after really 5 seconds are over, then it will call this function. There we add the numbers and resolve. Once you say resolve, automatically here opposite callback function will execute. So there, whatever the z value you have given, that will be received here. Not only number, we can give any type of argument values. How many arguments you have given, that many arguments you have to receive here. Then we can display the output to the user by updating the value into C. C is already binded here now, so that in that way output will come. But in the meanwhile, I want to display some message to user like please wait. Please wait message I want to display. So for displaying that, message equal to empty. On clicking add function, message equal to please wait. And after completion of the task, message equal to empty. And we want to display that message after the button. Okay, now check it. So number we have given, immediately it is saying please wait. After completion of the task, now it is disappear. And sometimes what happens, some exception may raise. Here in this place, some exception may raise. For example, we have taken some variable of var, some p equal to 0, q equal to x by p. That means some exception will raise, divide by 0 exception will raise. Low number is divided by 0, but we are trying to divide. Then exception may raise. At the time, what's happening? Okay, we'll try other exception. Okay. Okay, just we have given alert, but a spelling mistake is a check it. Alert a spelling mistake. Then what happens? Okay, so we got that exception here, and statement stopped. It is still saying please wait. That means the remaining process not completed. Then what's going on? Just then the second function will execute. So whenever this statement is failed, automatically it will execute the second function. In case of an exception, it will execute the second function. First one executes in case of successful completion. Second one execute in case of any error. Okay, presently it's not calling. Okay, actually, once you raise any kind of exception, maybe spelling mistake or throw anything here, any kind of error here, or it will execute. It has to execute this function, but presently for some reason it's not executing. Just assume the understand the concept. So this function will execute in case of successful completion. Means exactly when you say resolve only, this first function will execute. In case of any kind of errors, the second function will execute. And in case of any notification, the third function will execute. Totally three functions: success, error, notification. Notification means just telling the progress. Suppose I have given you some task. After 20 minutes, you made a message me that saying that just only this much completed, this much pending. Just will inform me the progress. That is what notification. The notification can be multiple times. For example, after 500 milliseconds, one notification like please wait for some time. Okay, some notification we are given. Notify with the help of notify, some notification we have given. And after completion of that, after 3000 milliseconds, please wait some more time. This is second notification. This is what first notification, this is what second notification. So after really resolvement only, it's finished. So every time when you say notify in this like this, in these places, this third function will execute. Now check it. This is the first notification, and after that another second notification. After that only at last only task is finished. And instead of displaying this message, I want to print actual message. I mean this one. Please wait more time. Please wait. This message I want to get. That message you can receive by using some argument here. Suppose message. So this variable, this name can be anything actually. Instead of MSG, I'm giving M. It can be anything. This variable represents an actual message of the notification. Now we can check. So first notification message, second notification message also get it. And that you can display in the message. And this message will be displayed here, right? In this place. You can now check it. So first notification, and this one is second notification, and finally we got the result. Okay, this is how to handle the large amount of code with the help of asynchronous mode. Overall, to execute the code in asynchronous mode, then only we require all these things. Even if it seems complex, we have to do this in case of a large amount of code, sometimes unpredictable code. We cannot identify how much time this will take. This may take just a half second, this may take 10 minutes also, we cannot predict it. Sometimes they are reading the data from database. These are all examples of $Q. So any doubts in this now?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Okay. And there is a small consideration here. Instead of writing the names like this, okay, it is better to keep one array. And in that array, we have to write that names, whatever the argument you want to receive. And we have to close that array here. Check it. At the beginning, we have opened one square brackets array. Inside that array, element 1, element 2, and this whole function itself is element 3. So what is the advantage of giving like that? AngularJS will recognize the arguments based on these names instead of based on these names. Based on these values, what you mentioned in double quotes, based on that names only it is identifying that arguments. So what is the advantage of identifying like this? See, if you don't do this, what happens? If you depend on these names, and when you compress the code, minify the code, these names may be renamed. You may get some different name like A, B, something. So this may be renamed as some X, this may be renamed as Y, some other different names maybe. See, there are some online tools. We can minify the JavaScript code in real time. What will you do? Instead of writing the same JavaScript code in the same file, in the same HTML file, you will write the same in a separate JS file, and that file also will minify it. Minify means compress it. Compressing means remove the comments, remove the line breaks, remove the spaces, and also shorten the variable names. Variable names are shortened. I mean, suppose there is a variable called employee name, that will be just become as E. Employee name variable become as E. Salary become as S. Like that, the variable names will be shortened, single character names. So as a part of that, $scope and $q may become as X and Y. or some other different names we don't know. At that time, the program will not work totally. X and Y are known to the AngularJS and it will not work. That's why, so from the beginning itself, it's a good habit to follow this approach. If you follow this approach, what happens? These names may be modified now. Even though these names are X, Y, or any other names, no problem. Because AngularJS will not recognize the arguments based on these names. It considers these names. So first argument will be given to first variable. Second argument will be given to second variable, and so on. How many you want, you can have as many as you want. But sequence, order is required. First one first, second one second, like that. Direct scope will be received and given to X. Direct to received and given to Y. In that way, the problem is solved. Now you compress the code, no problem. So that's why from the beginning, it's a good habit to follow this one. It's one of the strong recommendations in AngularJS. That's why very frequently we'll see this syntax in real time. And this concept is called as dependency injection. Dependency injection. Okay, so that's all for today, and we'll continue next class tomorrow. So if you have any doubts presently, you can ask me.
I think I'm good, but I need practice. అనుకుంటా.
Okay, చేయండి.
Actually, yeah, it looks like I'm able to understand, but when I start doing,
అది ఒక చిన్న టాస్క్, అది ఎడిషన్ ఆఫ్ నెంబర్స్ లాంటి చిన్న టాస్క్ తీసుకుని చేయండి, మీకు ఐడియా వచ్చేస్తుంది.
ఇప్పుడు మీరు చెప్తుంది క్లియర్ గా ఉంటుంది. ఆ తర్వాత స్టార్ట్ చేసినప్పుడు ఐ హావ్ టు రీవిజిట్ యువర్ వీడియోస్ అన్నమాట.
అట్లీస్ట్ 2 times ట్రై చేయండి, వచ్చేస్తుంది అప్పుడు.
ఓకే, థ్యాంక్ యూ అండి.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll continue tomorrow.